I'm sure you know the saying, life is a marathon, not a sprint, right? I mean, I've probably said it many times on this podcast. Well, it's true. You are training for life just like you'd be training for a marathon. It takes getting uncomfortable, uber dedication, a training plan to climb those stinking hills, incorporating rest days so that you can refuel, and fueling yourself for the right energy. This is such a great metaphor for life because we require those exact same habits and training for life. So, how about we chat about how to train for the marathon of life in a healthy, stress-less, and purposeful way? Now, before we begin, I did want to mention that my Finish Line Goals program is a great way to do just that, to break up that big, burly goal and make it practical within the capacity you have in the season you're in so that you don't get disappointed and quit on yourself. My big goal is to help you reverse engineer your goal so it's chunked down into smaller, doable tasks that lead to the finish line. Now, if you're interested in learning more or joining us, head to redhotmindset.com/FLG to learn more and join us inside. I'll leave a link in the show notes as well, but it's redhotmindset.com/FLG. Now, this is an interview I did on Emily Nichols' Self-Transformed podcast, and I hope you enjoy listening as much as I enjoyed chatting with her. So let's get to it. Hey friend, welcome to Pursuing Goals God's Way. Have you thought about finally starting that business now that your kids are older? Do you ever stay awake wondering how to mesh your passions into purposeful work? Do you have big, ambitious goals but feel overwhelmed or even unqualified to pursue them? Hey, I'm Gabe. Not too long ago, I longed for the confidence to start an online business. I just wanted to make a difference outside my home bubble using my gifts. But I kept telling myself that I wasn't good enough. I didn't know enough, and I didn't have enough time. Until I realized something huge. My kids need me to be their example, and they need to see me win. And yours do too. In this podcast, you will learn how to clarify your goals, plan with purpose, and ditch your distractions. If you're ready to make an impact and an income, all for the glory of God, then you're in the right place. As an avid runner, I believe life is one massive marathon. It's up to you to run your own race and to finish it well. So lace up those running shoes, pop in your earbuds, and let's do this thing.
I love talking to other podcasters. I actually heard you on one of my friends' podcasts. We're in a mastermind together. And I was like, you just hear someone, you're like, I want to have them on my show too. So thank you for coming on. The first question I ask every single guest is, what comes to mind when you hear the phrase self-transformed?
Okay, I love this question, and I had to think about it a little bit because I'm going, okay, what does it mean to be self-transformed? Because I do have a deep faith as well. And so I think about the fact that God's the one that transforms me. He molds me and shapes me. But self-transformed to me means that I am intentionally seeking to be a better version of myself every single day, whether it means that I'm studying something, if I'm doing personal development, or if it's just that I'm listening to that still small voice in my spirit and actually obeying it. So self-transformed really just has to do with the intentionality of everything I do.
Yeah. Everyone always says that. They're like, I had to really think about it. Like, what does it mean for me to like transform and evolve? And I feel like we're always transforming, and a big piece of that is, listening to what that inner voice is and actually taking action, like actually doing the thing that you keep getting these nudges about and being okay with learning or unknowing and seeing what happens along the way. I love that. Well, Gabe, can you share a little bit with us about who you are? Maybe your own transformation journey that has led you to really what you do and who you are today.
Mm-hmm. So I would say my transformation, I've had so many transformation journeys. We'll just put it that way. Totally. But I would say it started really in college, moving into young adulthood. And I struggled a lot. I had a lot of issues. We'll just put it that way. But I struggled a lot with just self-confidence and self-image. And I had an eating disorder in college. I would call it an exercise disorder. It was kind of if I ate too much, I'd exercise extra. If I didn't exercise, I didn't eat, that type of a thing that I had to struggle through. It was a big battle in my mind. And because I felt like I had to look a certain way and be a certain way. And what's interesting about that journey is that on the outside, I looked like I had it all together. I looked super successful. I was involved in everything, the life of the party, all of the things. But on the inside, I was so torn up and nobody knew. Like I hid that part of my life. And it really messed me up to the point where I got to the point going, I don't know if there's anything left to live for. And that was a really scary point in my journey, especially when I mentioned before that I have a big faith base. And as a Christian, I thought that would never happen to me. How could I think those things? And you feel this guilt like, oh, I'm not a good Christian now because of it. Well, that's not even true. That's just the enemy talking. But what I learned is one, I was willing to seek help. Like I got very deep in the weeds of that part of my life, fell into a deep depression, but I was still willing once I hit that point to ask for help and reach out for it. And thank God I did, because it put me on this journey of self-discovery. Like it put me on this journey of self-development. I actually went to the library or to the bookstore and I go, I don't know what book I need, but I'm going to walk around and find one. And it was interesting because the one I picked up it's called Lord, Change My Attitude. I can't remember who it's by now, but it's really about the Israelites' journey in the desert and how they really needed to change their attitude. Like that could have been a 40-day journey instead of a 40-year journey. And I don't know why I was drawn to that book, but it started changing my life, changing the progression. Because I was like, okay, I just need to reframe how I'm thinking. Like I need to reframe that mindset. I need to go into God discovery mode to help me learn a self-discovery, right? To really know who I am and understand that we are very precious, and there's so much that we have available to us to do that. And so anyway, it just kind of brought me on this journey that really led me to want to help others in their own, whether it's because they went through a deep depression or eating disorder like I did, or because they just don't feel the purpose. And they don't know what they're being called to do, but they know that there's something, but they just don't know how to tackle that and get through it and have that breakthrough. And I feel like going on my own journey has helped me to be able to help others, lead them through that.
What a journey. And you're right. Like we go on so many different journeys and transformations over our life. That's for sure. I think it's really, I love how a lot of times our own stories, when we go through something, we're like, how can I now help others, based on what you've learned and what has helped you as well. And helping women find their purpose. I mean, I work with a lot of working moms, as I'm sure you do as well. And a lot of times it's like, oh, my purpose is being just a mom. And that's what they'll say, just a mom. And there's so much purpose to our lives. And sometimes we just get so caught up in, all the roles we play and all the hats we wear. And I know you've kind of talked about life as, running a marathon. And you're a Boston Marathon marathoner, right?
Yep.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. My husband qualified in 2019, but then the whole thing happened the past couple of years, so he hasn't been able to run it yet. He wants that jacket so bad. We ran into someone on the trail the other day. He was, they're wearing a Boston jacket. I want to go get mine. But doing something like a marathon, especially being able to qualify for such a prestigious marathon, it takes a lot of dedication and training over time. So can you explain a little bit about how you really compare, training for a marathon, like an actual marathon, and how do you compare that to training for life?
I love it. One thing I have to say is I have all the feels for your husband. Like I understand because I know the commitment that goes into training and qualifying, and especially qualifying in 2019. I actually qualified in 2018 and was waiting for the 2020 because that was when I was supposed to run too. And then I had to wait and I did the virtual 2020 and then waited again, and I qualified in 2018, ran it in fall of 2021. So it was like a 3-year journey and wait.
It's still ongoing. So he was 10 seconds shy of the cutoff. So he qualified, but then he got cut by 10 seconds. And then when he got to reuse his time, he was cut by 5 seconds. And then at that point, he was just like, all right, forget it. I got to retrain and do another marathon. He's like, I wasn't meant to do it at this time of year, which was fine. But we actually did a whole podcast episode to get it. He's been the only male guest I've had on my show, but same, like, it's a lot of dedication and time and mental work that goes into it. So I'd love to hear like your take on that.
Yeah. Yeah. And he'll get there. I think it's great. I think just qualifying itself is huge, but I get it, the wanting to run it. But when it comes to, I love using marathons and running as an analogy for life because people understand it. Runners especially understand it, but I think just everyday people who don't even like running can understand what those analogies mean. But as far as like when I started training for Boston the first time, it was mainly me being just a mom, right? Going, I kind of want to do something. I want to see if I can hit a goal again. I've always been a driver and achiever. And when I moved into motherhood, I love every minute of it. But I did feel like I put everything on the shelf to be a mom, which we don't have to do. Like our kids need to, and this is one of my big messages is that we are supposed to be the example for our kids. They need to see us model for them what it means to be an adult and what it means to live a successful, happy life. Because otherwise, what are they growing up to do? They don't want to do what we do if we're not showing them that. And so that's kind of one of my strategies when I started that. I was like, I could have a goal and it could be a hard goal and I could try and decide, can I do hard things again and start creating new goals and whatnot. And so that's kind of what took me on that journey. But now looking back, like that was hard. It was hard because you had to essentially schedule your training in like an appointment. You had to think about how you were feeling your body. You have to think about what kind of training you need. It's very mental, very taxing. It's very hard to run a marathon to qualify for the Boston Marathon. Like it takes a lot of time and sacrifice. And my kids and family sacrificed for me to do that. And so when I won, they won. And I loved that though, because they were so proud of me. They were the first ones to tell me that good job and like that it really mattered to them. And it sparked something in me that said, man, what we do matters. And so taking that marathon training and bringing it to life, what could we do if we treated life like a marathon where we go, okay, we can't just go out and run and have a good race. We have to actually take some time to plan and see what is it and have a vision. Like, what is it that we're going after? Like, what do we want our finish line to look like? What kind of legacy do we want to leave? And then work backward and create some mini goals or mini projects along the way and figure out what kind of disciplines and habits. And Emily, I love because you talk a lot about habits and being and making things be a part of your life. And so it's not just, okay, now I have to do this and check this off. No, you create it as a habit to become a lifestyle. And that's how I think of when I go out and run, it's because it's a lifestyle. It was a choice that I turned into a habit that is now a lifestyle. And that's what we can do training for life. We can create the lifestyle we want by the disciplines that we have.
I have a question for you. Do you have a longing in your heart, a dream, if you will, that you've wanted to take action on, but you're scared to take the leap because you're afraid it won't happen? Maybe you're afraid you can't fit it into your life. Maybe it's hard to actually take the time for you to work on it. What if I told you that you could go after a goal that works in the season you're in with the capacity you have, ditching the hustle culture altogether? If you're interested in learning how to take your goal to the finish line and still have the family time that you crave, then you need to register for my free on-demand workshop called The 3 Pillars to Setting and Crushing Goals in a Stressless, No-Hustle Way. In this workshop, you will learn the clarity you need to make your dream real to you without worrying about how it will all come together. How to craft a simplified game plan that gets results in the season of life you're in. The secret sauce to taking action that works, even if you have limited time to make things happen. Plus, the #1 mistake people make when goal setting that causes them to quit too soon. If you are more than ready to finally take that desire inside your heart from conception to the finish line, this is for you. You can register for the free workshop at redhotmindset.com/goals. You'll get access to a free workbook to take good notes during our time together as well. Again, that's redhotmindset.com/goals. I can't wait to host you inside.
Ooh, by the disciplines that we have. I love that so much. And you were so right, Gabe. Like our kids are watching, and to show them like, hey, it's important to, make promises to yourself and show up for your training plans. It's important to take care of yourself. Oh, look, when I win, we all win. I love that so much. Oh my gosh. Were your kids there when you ran Boston?
They were there the second time. Yes. So
Okay.
The first time my husband and I just went, they were really little,
Yeah.
but the second time it was just fall of 2021. My kids, I think at the time were, gosh, I don't even know, 14, 11 and 7 maybe. So I was like, I want to bring them, get the Boston experience, go do like the Freedom Trail together and do some of the historical parts as well. So we made it a huge long road trip. We went to Niagara Falls on the way there. It was super fun, but they really enjoyed it. They don't really like sitting there and waiting for me to finish my race, but I think the end they still enjoy because it's just like the process.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's almost like we are on this journey and you don't really see results or you don't see your progress very easily. But once you get to that end and you look back and you're like, wow, look at how much I've changed, or look at how much I've grown. Look at how much I've self-transformed, right? How much I've transformed in this time. And I feel like my kids were that way too, or it just kind of encourages them to keep going after their goals that are hard. Because my oldest also is an elite gymnast and he has really big goals. I mean, he has Olympic goals and he can do it, but man, it's mental. I learn from him every day because of how much he fails. He fails more than he succeeds. That's just what a gymnast's life is, right? And so I feel like we can learn from our kids if we're willing to like really just watch them too.
Oh, I really feel that in my heart. I have 2 boys. They're 14 and 11. And same, like, I feel like I'm always like learning from my oldest son, like all the time. He golfs and it's such a mental sport, like bless his heart. And then, growing up and going through hormones and then having such a mental sport, it's like, wow, I'm so proud of you for how you've conducted yourself. But also, your kids seeing you finish your race and like them feeling a part of it. That's so, so great. But I think a lot of times, a lot of women are probably listening like, yeah, that's great, but there's no way I could dedicate any time to doing something like that, or dedicate any time to just take care of myself, right? Just for those basic needs. So mom guilt is real. It's something that still creeps up on me sometimes too. I even have strategies to help me with it. What do you do, or how do you coach someone to help them when they're feeling those feelings of guilt associated with taking care of themselves?
So good. So good. Because it's important to take care of ourselves. And I know when we look at it and we talk about like self-care and it's selfish or all these things, well, when I try and coach people, when they're looking at what's my purpose, what do I do? Well, the first purpose and mission is you are a mom. If you are a mom, like that, your purpose is to be a good enough mom for your kids. It doesn't mean you have to be a perfect mom. It doesn't mean you have to be like I'm not a Pinterest mom. We'll just put it that way. I don't like playing with my kids very much. I love playing board games, but I don't like playing Legos. Okay. We'll just throw that out there. So I've had that mom guilt of, I don't spend time with my kids. I just want to sit here and watch them, but as far as being our best version of ourselves and being able to, one, take care of everything else going on and everyone else around us. If we're not taking care of ourselves, we're going to burn out. And taking care of ourselves, not meaning go get massages and pedicures. I mean, do that if you want, that's fine. But if we're not taking care of our basic needs, getting enough rest, and doing things we enjoy, like for me, it's running. And my boys know when I don't run. A few days after not running, they're like, maybe you should go on around, you're a little crabby, right? And so that's taking care of yourself. Eating right is taking care of yourself. All of those things, going and hanging out with friends is taking care of yourself. And if you're not willing to do those things, you will burn out. You will not be able to meet the measures that you have to be as a busy mom or working woman. And the other thing is, if we don't take time, rest is like one of the most important cares, I think, along with white space, rest and white space, because if you're not finding the white space, it's really hard to sit and reflect and really know where you're going to be called next or what your purpose is. Like, what can I do to make an impact? And so I just really encourage moms to think about it in the fact that you are the first person that you're taking care of, along with everybody else. Like, I don't know about you, Emily, but when I go on I just went on a girls retreat this past fall, and great. I love it. So fun, a few nights away, but I'm telling you, the prep to get to girls' night and the prep. I mean, I have to make sure my boys have their schedules. I have to make sure the meals are ready and frozen meals for them. And I have to make sure that everything has to be planned. And then I get home to have to catch up. And I'm like, man, that was rough. That was a lot of work. But in those few days, I got what I needed too. I got time to reflect and refuel. Because I mean, the mom is the lifeblood of the house, I think. They are the ones who draw the atmosphere. And so if we are not taking care of ourselves, then the atmosphere is going to be lacking as well.
Yeah, it's a great way to reframe it and to know that, like I'm saying, my kids would say, I usually go for a daily walk. And like a few weeks ago, my oldest was like, hey, I'll start dinner if you haven't like walked yet today.
That's so sweet.
Thank you. Yes, I have not walked. How could you tell? And just went out. But that's so cool to like have them notice that and see like, hey, when mom does this, it helps all of us. Everyone reaps the benefits, and it helps you lose that mom guilt as well too. I mean, when we're thinking about, finding our purpose in life, how can we do that if we don't give ourselves that white space? Like you mentioned, if we don't come from a place of thriving versus merely surviving. So other than being a mom, which is such a big role so many of us hold, how else can we step in and have that red hot mindset like you talked about? I love that so much, to help us find our purpose in our life, because eventually one day these kids, it's super important right now to instill like core values in them and just basic how to take care of yourself someday. But then they're going to grow up and go out into the world and be young adults. How can we also tune into ourselves and listen to that little voice as to what is my purpose? I am their mom. This is one of the most important roles I will ever hold. But what else is my purpose?
Mm-hmm. Love that. So yeah, red hot mindset really means being willing to step into the fire. And it's the fire of refinement, where for me, it's God molding and shaping me into the woman he wants me to be. But you can't really have refinement without pain. And that's why it's like stepping into the fire, a silversmith who is creating this beautiful piece. It wasn't beautiful. It was dilapidated. It was ugly until it went through the fire and shed those layers, and they made it look beautiful. They made a different creation out of it. So it's being willing to do that. Am I willing as a mom to step into the unknown, to not care what others think, to, see the fear and do it anyway, do things scared? Am I willing to do that? Because really stepping into the fire means stepping outside of our comfort zones. And sometimes this is, some people might not like me saying this, but sometimes being a mom can be in our comfort zone. Like, we can put our kids in front of us doing what we're being called to do. Now, I'm not saying like sacrifice your kids. Don't take care of them first, right? But what I'm saying is we can put them on a pedestal and we can hide behind them. And that's not what we're called to do. We're called to do whatever it is that God called us to do. And in order to find that out, there's a lot of ways. And I don't know if everyone has just this one purpose. Like, you were meant to do this one thing, and if you don't do that, then you miss your calling. No. It's listening to that still small voice. It's taking that reflection time. For me, I need a quiet time. I journal a lot. I pray a lot, but I journal a lot. And I journal my thoughts, because a lot of times it'll help me see, oh, wow, I really have a passion for this specific thing. I really think I maybe am talented or skilled at this. Like maybe it's asking good questions, and leading people toward their own decision making or getting unstuck, right? But if I don't take time to look at that and go, what kind of skills do I have? What kind of talents do I have? Then I'm not really going to know I can use them. And so I'll journal a lot and whatnot. So I think one of the biggest things for us as moms is to find that time to do that, and also to listen and go, oh my goodness, my spirit says that maybe I should start a business or whatever, whatever it is. Maybe I should start a ministry, or maybe I should be a Sunday school teacher. Well, if you hear that, then you need to take that into consideration and maybe start meditating on it. Maybe start looking for confirmations for it, because it will be there if you're looking. But then also, in order to step into our purpose, we have to say yes and be obedient to whatever that is that we hear. And so that's really, really the first step in knowing what your purpose is. You don't have to go on this big, long, extravagant week away to figure out what that purpose is and that one thing. Well, it might just be that you are supposed to be the Girl Scout trooper mom for, like it's just saying yes to the next thing that you're seeing.
And I love how you mentioned just kind of having that white space and trying to listen, and that purpose can change over time, and it doesn't have to be some big, crazy, extravagant thing. I feel like I get whispers from God all the time, like, oh, you should try this, or you should try that. Or, I broke my tailbone back in May. And I was joking after it happened. I was like, oh, it was just God, like literally knocking me on my butt to like slow me down. And then I found a real joy and love of yoga. And now I'm like, I think I want to incorporate yoga into what I'm doing more. And I'm like, I would have never done that if I hadn't got uncomfortable, actually felt the pain. Like I literally broke my butt. You don't realize how much you do with your butt. But looking back, going through it, was like, man, this is so hard. Like, why did this happen? And now it's just like, okay, now I see I had to go through that fire and come back on the other end. Like, okay, now I have, a new purpose or some new tool in my tool belt to really help me take care of myself just in that way, and to be the best mom that I can be too. I love that so much. So say we've kind of gone through that and we're taking that time. You mentioned journaling as a great habit that you do to kind of listen intuitively for that little voice to kind of find out, where should I go next? What are some other habits you would recommend the ladies listening try out to try to find that purpose, something they could actually take action with?
Mm-hmm. Another couple habits, I like to call it's called the red hot formula, but it's really, the first thing is really seeing it. So like I said, like the journaling and whatnot, but also just kind of digging a little deeper, because I don't think we'll ever do anything bigger than ourselves if we don't have a deeper why behind it. Like, what is our motivation to do something else, to step out of our comfort zone and really get uncomfortable in the unknown? And so taking some time to really think about what that deep rooted why is. And your why, again, can change over time, but it's not usually the first thing that comes up in your mind. You really have to dig and find the root. And so I always think about it like, when our kids keep asking, why is the sky blue? Well, why is that? All the things, and they want to know the deep reason, not that they really care that much, but they ask why all the time. And I feel like we need to do that, and create a habit of that. Like when we feel stuck, it's probably because our why wasn't deep enough. And so just kind of, and that's something I journal too, is the whys behind what I do, because I also want it to be purposeful. I want it to be intentional, because if it's not intentional, then why are we doing it? It's just taking up space in our life. So a habit that I like to do when it comes to these things is to do kind of a weekly, monthly, quarterly, but really a weekly hash to go, what's going on this week? What do I have to do? Like, what are my priorities? What do I not have to do? Is there anything I should say no to? And really being purposeful about planning your week out because there are some things that we have to do. Like if you're a working mom, we have to work in order to make money to pay for our kids' activities or whatever else, or put food on the table. Right. And even sometimes it's fun things, like maybe, if you are feeling called to doing something, like for me, I'm called to writing books and things like that. Well, if I don't say no to even some fun opportunities, I'm not going to have time to do that writing. So it's really figuring out, what am I saying no to? Whatever I'm saying no to, I'm saying yes to something else. So kind of taking checks and balances in that and creating a habit of that.
I think those are such simple habits that we can do every day, and use some basic habit strategies that the ladies have learned through listening to Self Transform to actually make those happen in our life, and actually schedule in that white space to hear that inner voice and step into their purpose and be okay with transforming into whatever that is. Years ago I had heard they were talking about volunteering at church, and I was like, I've done the kids ministry before, like I've paid my dues, I don't want to do it anymore. And they started a fitness ministry. I'm like, oh, well, I can like volunteer to like help coach boot camp, because that's like my area of expertise, and I just do it when I can. And I'm like, wow, this feels really great. Now it's super early, so when I get up, I'm always like, ugh. But after I'm done, I'm like, oh, this felt so great. This felt so good as a way to serve at church without it, being like a big, energy drainer for me. And it makes me feel good and help lead people to taking care of themselves, and doing it in a place of faith is really cool. But if I wasn't taking the time to listen and actually take action, I would have never had that opportunity to be able to meet some really cool people doing that too.
Exactly. That's such a good example.
Yeah. Well, Gabe, I have loved this conversation with you. So I have just started doing these rapid fire questions with my guests, because I was on someone else's podcast and they did this, and I was like, well, that was a fun way to end our interview. So we're going to do it together today. Does that sound okay?
Sure. That sounds fun.
Okay, let's do it. So what is your current favorite healthy habit?
I would say running, but actually I'm going to go a different way and say it's now hiking for teeners, but I don't know if that's a habit because it's like a monthly thing, but it's a new thing, like hiking or trail running now that I'm near the mountains.
That's so cool. We love to get outside, the best. What is your drink order at Starbucks or your favorite coffee shop?
So, well, my favorite coffee shop is all the ones that are not chains, like anywhere that's local. It's really cutesy, but I don't drink coffee. So this is a fun question. My favorite drink order at Starbucks would be hot chocolate with a splash of either mint, like peppermint.
Very, very good. I like that. You're like one of I've had a few people say, I don't drink coffee. All right.
Funny. I'm a rarity.
I love it. And then what was your last purchase on Amazon, or like last guilty pleasure purchase, whatever you choose?
Well, I think the funny one is a Big Nate book. But the reason I had to buy it is because our dog literally ate my son's homework.
Oh.
He brought home a book from his teacher's collection, and our dog literally ate it. So he's been known to eat my to-do lists and things like that. So I had to repurchase it for her.
And Big Nate books are great. My 11-year-old loves Big Nate books. That's so much fun. Oh my gosh, that's funny. That's always a funny response out of everybody's. Gabe, thank you so much for coming on the show. I love this conversation with you.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. I loved it too. Thank you so much for joining me today. I had a great time, and I hope you did too. Before we go though, if you resonate with this episode, please consider leaving a review on iTunes or sharing it with a friend, as it helps grow the podcast. Also, if you're not a part of the Red Hot Accountability Club, what are you waiting for? It's a private online community away from the noise of social media that provides coaching, support, and encouragement as you go after your biggest goals in business or life in a stressless, no hustle kind of way. Inside the club, you will own your own results, hold yourself accountable, and lean on others for support. If you've been looking for a simple, off social media way to grow, then this is it. Head on over to redhotmindset.com/RHA to learn more and join us today. Again, that's redhotmindset.com/RHA. And I can't wait to welcome you into the club. In all things I pray, you just run your race. I believe in you.